I noticed you're very gentle in your touch, very comforting and all that. You also use
Well, I'll show you that.
EMDR.
Well, that EMDR, now, EMDR is very interesting.
Stroking, and in other words, like there's a combination of techniques which I like, and they're all those kind of somatic deconditioning sorts of techniques.
Psychosensory therapies.
By the way, for a psychologist to be able to touch a patient, here's how you solve that with biofeedback. If you don't do this, you can be accused in a law case of assault or battery. You just ask the person if you can.
Well, I don't have it, but in my book, which I recommend everybody get, because look, you're getting 8 years of, and Susan will tell you, this is a 2-day presentation I'm giving to you in about 10 minutes, so there's a lot more stuff there that I'm just not covering.
Do you have it all out, the whole thing step by step in your book?
Everything that I'm telling you, except for about the mPAR receptors, is that we worked out within since the book was published, but in the second edition it will be there. You want to just take that little thing off there? So we're going to go into a quick understanding of, quick 2-minute understanding of phobias. So we have an unconditioned fear stimulus called height. You know, stepping off an edge of a cliff, the brain says, not so fast. Fear. The conditioned stimulus, the bridge. Fear. Traumatic memory consolidation, and then retrieval of memory when you go over another bridge. Fear, and then it generalizes to all bridges. That's how phobias go. Now, these things become much more complex than you. I was telling you the story. I forgot I was telling someone the story about a patient, a 16-year-old came to me by his parents, he's a bipolar child, referred to me by a pediatrician. He said the child has a needle phobia, and his parents want to send him to Israel on birthright, and unless he gets this shot, he can't go. So I said, my child, 16 years old, dentist, you know, what do I, you know, you can get my thumb strung up by the state education department. But I said, okay, because I knew the pediatrician very well. So he comes in, 15 minutes later, no problem, handling needles, no problem, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, why don't you now go to your doctor to get a shot? Goes, father calls me up next day, won't get in the car. Wow, that's interesting. And as Ms. Fisher would state, that it really wasn't only the fear of the needles, but it was also additionally the fear of being abandoned and moving into a new place that was causing him his distress. So there was a layer there. So I said, bring it back again. Brings it back, and father comes into the office, says, won't get out of the car. I go, okay, would you mind if I went over to the car? He says, he won't roll down the window. I don't, these are true story. He said, I don't need him to roll down the window. So I go to the car, I go, how are you, blah, blah, blah. I heard you're having a challenge in getting this done. And I know covert hypnosis, I know neuro-linguistic programming, so and other nifty little tricks, so I started to chat to him. And I realized at that time that he was struggling between his two voices, his bipolarity. I'm scared to death and I don't want to be abandoned, I want to go. I'm scared to death, I can't, and he couldn't resolve that. And at the end of the day, I did a quick, he finally opened the window, and I just did a little touch on the arm to produce serotonin and said to him, remember, always choose the voice that moves you forward. And I said, have a nice day. And I said to his parents, okay, take him to the doc. So he drives to the doc's office, sits in the doctor's office for 3 hours with his brain going, I'm going, I can't go. I'm going, I can't go. Had the shot, went to Israel. And at that, for this child, it was a seminal event that will change his life forever, that he chose this path.
That's right.
How wonderful. 15 minutes. Very cost effective. Does everybody understand this? You guys are really, Susan, you're right, you're really up for it. Disrupting and traumatization. All right, so we're going to talk about havening. We have about another 10 minutes to go, and we'll have some questions. Haven gives three components: recall and activation of the emotional core. It is vital that we activate this particular postsynaptic neuron that's associated with this problem. So postsynaptic neuron is associated, the phosphorus is sitting there, and the brain is activated. We then apply distraction techniques. Now, what's the purpose of distraction techniques? The purpose of distraction techniques is to get the thought out of working memory. Now, what is working memory? What is working memory? Working memory, I'm sure you all know these things. Working memory is a place in your cortex that you bring concepts to apply applications to. So it's that area that you think. But the thing about working memory is that it can only hold one thought at a time. So if you were to try to hum and add 2 3-digit numbers together at the same time, you can't do it, because the working memory aspect only has a limited aspect of it. And what we recall, just like we did, we recall, Kate, is this right? You recall the conscious and subconscious feelings, the autonomic aspect of you were sweating and things like that, the somatosensory, how you felt in your system, and the emotional components. So that's how we bring these things up to be fully activated. So displacement of thought from working memory by distraction, humming a tune, counting, visualize movements. You saw me do all of those things. It makes no difference in which order you do them. But from my point of view, in my experience and where I do this, I run a system of counting, humming, touching, eye movement, and I don't care which order I do it in. So it's really unimportant, so there's no particular best way.
So while they're doing the humming and the counting of stuff, are they still supposed to be trying to recall the trauma?
No, you can't.
Just
You can't.
initially bring it up.
The thought is being displaced out of working memory.
Okay, so you initially bring up the trauma.
You're activating
but then-
that neuronal connection.
And they don't need to keep thinking about that.
They can't. Well, we want. Here's what's happening. Actually, I can show you the way. That's such a good question. All right. Here's what's happening. Here we go. Okay. This is working memory. It's controlled by a central executive. It has a phonological loop, which is a verbal commands.
Page 8.
Excuse me?
I'm just telling them where this is.
And a visual spatial sketch pad, which gives orientation. So once the trauma goes into working memory, what you want to do is displace it out of working memory, even though what we've done is here's the postsynaptic neuron in the amygdala, and here's the AMPA receptor, and here's the phosphorus ion, and this is the thalamus into here. We want this activated. And then by doing working memory, we take the emotional trauma off the table, leaving the activated AMPA postsynaptic receptor in place. Does everybody get that?
So even though they're not consciously thinking about it, their body's remembering it.
Yes, but this is still activated. Okay?
So it's almost as if you're bringing it up to and then it's like a target. You bring up the target and then you shoot.
Right. So, effective stimulation of varies. Now, this is right at your alley. Delta wave power generated is multiple of resting state. 90 times by touching the cheek. Now, we're going to talk about delta waves are important in a second. Shoulders, 5 to 38 times. Palms of hands, 5 times. Back of the hands, 1.1 times. Knee, vibrating calves and things. Just like your stim things you have here. Lateral eye movements, gamut point. You know what a gamma point is?
No.
Gamma point is in EFT and EMDR and these type of things, totally unnecessary. This was something from Roger Callahan that goes back, but when this all comes out, when you read the book, totally necessary, and it only activates at 1/10 of 1% over baseline. And meridian points versus non-meridian points doesn't do anything. Now the EFT people will be screaming down my throat about these things, but you know, we have this, and what's interesting, I have here the article. Where are you? Because you'll like this article. This is right up your alley, you guys. Here it is. This is by a guy named Mel Harper in the Journal of Traumatology not too long ago, on the neural basis of EMDR therapy, insights from QEEG studies. Oh, you know QEEG studies.
Bill Harper, it's a journal of
Traumatology.